I have it all figured out. I sat down and took everything into detail concerning Walpurgis, release timings, and everything regarding Sinner ID releases to properly theorycraft what the next Walpurgis ID is going to be and which Sinner it's going to be for. First and foremost, who's getting the next Walpurgis ID? The three current candidates for the next Walpurgis ID are either Faust, Otis, Yisang, or Sinclair. I use this through the art of deduction and understanding that in the past three Walpurgises, none of these sinners got IDs. Sinclair did, in fact, though, get an ego for Harmony. So, if he's previously gotten Walpurgis content, why am I including him here? He hasn't had an ID in a while. Out of the four I've mentioned, he's had the longest drought without an ID. Aside from Don Quixote, but she has gotten a Walpurgis ID fairly recently. So I decided to rule her out on that basis. Every other sinner, barring Yisang, has not had as long as a drought as Sinclair has for an ID, getting relatively recent releases, and overall having a really stacked roster. Now, for a little bit of theory crafting, if the ID goes to Sinclair, then the ID is most likely to be a charge ID. I'm personally going to be positive and not say it's an R-Corp ID, but rather two main candidates come to mind for an ID for Sinclair when it comes to Charge and Runa. The Gaze Office, who does not have Charge, but I think they would just look cool and they could be translated to Charge. And there's substantial evidence for the factor that they could include new status effects for teams that show no signs of the status effect before. The Index proselytes did not have Syncing, and the Thumb did not have Tremor Scorch or were centered around Burn in of itself. So the possibility of the Gaze Office being translated to a Charge archetype or a unique Charge is totally in the cards and is completely possible. This is the most stretched out theory crafting I can give for this office in particular, but there was another probability that appeared in my head that I had not considered before making this video. The next Walpurgis could have IDs centered around the Kane office. Now, if you don't recognize the symbol, go fucking play Runa. I actually want the Kane office to be present in the next Walpurgis, especially with a Nemo ID for Sinclair. I think the idea of giving Sinclair a ID based off someone with a prosthesis is really fucked up considering his backstory, and the way Nemo generally is in Library of Runa is very cowardly, which in a way could be reflected onto Sinclair that was sheltered and could never develop. Plenty of Walpurgis IDs do show that sinners never had their arcs. Transhu's Uptie story beats this over your head continuously. I think exploring this avenue for both characters would be super awesome, and I really want a Charge ID for Sinclair, for God's sake. So in conclusion, after all of that, after all my theory crafting, Don's getting it, she sells better, subscribe.